and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. The trailer's been running in the background as it does. It just on a loop.
Yep.
And I laughed because the end of our intro opened with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as the logo came up. It was like the most perfectly timed thing ever. By pure coincidence. Anyway, we are talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein today because it's Halloween, it's all the spookies, and we already did Bram Stoker's Dracula, and as you said, this is kind of considered the companion piece. I think it was originally meant to be a companion piece, right? Because it's Coppola produced.
Yeah, he was originally going to do it. He was originally going to make it himself, and through I don't know what specific circumstances, but he ended up giving it to Branagh, and Branagh took over the jobs, and they had a falling out.
Right.
Coppola basically said to him, take out at least 20 minutes at the beginning, and Branagh was like, fuck no. And so they had a falling out, and he completely denounced the movie when it came out.
Well, interestingly, if I was going to cut anything out of the movie, it would not be the fucking start. So...
No, well, I mean, he said 20 minutes. That's quite a lot.
That's a hell of a lot.
It's a 30 lot. I mean, that includes all of the, I would have maybe keep the, I think you have to keep the ship stuff in.
Well, I love that bit.
Maybe cut down some of the younger, version.
Yeah, I like all of that though. To be honest,
see,
I really like it.
I think that, and a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people really hate that.
I mean, if I'm honest, and I don't hate it, but honestly, if I was going to cut anything out of this movie, it would be all of the bride stuff. Honestly.
Oh, really?
I would ditch everything from that point and then just end it with him dying in trying to find him.
Yeah.
That's where I would have ended.
Oh, I see. I like the bride stuff because I think maybe it's just.
Oh, I don't hate it. I just think if it feels a bit like tacked on, and it's not given quite enough time to breathe.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It definitely feels like
so like either make the movie longer or cut that bit out. Basically.
Well, I think there's probably I know there's a sort of longer cut which has got more stuff in it.
Right.
There is a work print that has a lot of longer scenes and a lot of added stuff. There's a bit where they animate a dog, and I know there's a couple of discussions between Victor and Elizabeth that are omitted.
Right.
So there is definitely a longer version, and maybe it would have given a little bit more time to breathe those bits. Because you're right, it does feel quite compacted when we get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's just because obviously I'm a big fan of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, and obviously we got a whole movie there.
You mean the
original Universal Horror run, the Karloff?
I adore the Bride of Frankenstein. That is such a weird movie.
It's such a cracktastic movie. It's amazing. People forget when they praise that movie. I swear people forget how cracktastic fucking Bride of Frankenstein is.
Yeah,
the little people in the jars. And stuff.
Exactly. People forget about the whole Pretorius.
Yeah, Dr. Pretorius is like ignored from like history. It's like I wonder how many of you people that praise Bride of Frankenstein actually remember Bride of Frankenstein.
I mean, how weird is it? The little he's got little Henry VIII in a jar.
Rapey Henry VIII in a jar.
It's fucking batshit, that movie.
It is absolutely insane, but I love it.
I think probably most people just think that the Bride stuff is in the first movie.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's in the book.
Maybe. I
mean, it's only one book.
Well,
they kind of decapitated it for the original, and I think some people don't realise that they're separate movies.
No, and
their memories they're merged together.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like obviously with the second movie with Bride of Frankenstein, they opened it with Mary Shelley. Like talking, in a kind of dinner.
It's Elsa Lancaster, isn't it? She plays both Shelley and and Elizabeth, doesn't she?
Yeah, and we get the same kind of thing here, but we just get it as a voiceover with her just sort of reciting.
But one of the other things I will say that having watched this movie again was, wow, I guess I'd never realised how much it feels like Kenneth Branagh loves himself.
He gets topless and sweaty a lot.
There is a lot of lingering shots on himself in this movie that you would think, maybe not, Ken.
Maybe, yeah, Ken. Come on, buddy. It's one thing if you weren't the director, but when you're the director, it's like
exactly. It feels really indulgent, self-indulgent, doesn't it? But my grandmother, bless her, once watched when we were watching. It wasn't this movie. I don't remember which movie it would have been. But we were watching something with Kenneth Branagh in, and my grandmother said, "Never trust a man with no lips."
Fair.
I always thought.
I think that's fine.
I never noticed it until you brought it up. But yeah, Kenneth Branagh has no lips. It's really weird.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I guess he does. He grows a beard to hide it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think when he's got the moustache and things, you just don't notice it so much.
Exactly. But yeah, so when did you first see this movie?
I went to the cinema to see this movie.
Ah, and how did you find it?
I loved it.
Excellent.
I honestly...
It's very divisive, this movie. I didn't realise how divisive it was until recently.
At the time, the most reviews of it at the time were really negative. They hated it.
It's almost... It's trying to do an almost impossible task of following up on one of the most iconic looks and movies of all time. Two of the most iconic movies of all time. I mean, like, Frankenstein set the mold for how Frankenstein looks.
Mm-hmm.
And Bride of Frankenstein set the mold for how the bride looks.
Yeah.
And those movies have been watched by everyone by 1994, and that's the story. I mean, most people know those movies more than they know the novella, the book, any of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all based on those films, pretty much.
Yeah.
So by the time you get around to this, it's like, whoa, because we've seen lots of Dracula, and I guess we had Hammer for Frankenstein. But that's a very different take, and they never really. I think Hammer sensibly sidestepped all of this by going like, we're just going to focus on Frankenstein and do the Doctor stuff and make him like the villain of the piece.
Plus, what I love about the Hammer ones is they literally do that. They make Frankenstein a villain.
Yeah.
And they focus on the horror.
Yes.
And I think that's what this movie doesn't have. This is more of an operatic gothic love story sort of thing, isn't it?
And
it's more like that than and I think a lot of people were massively disappointed that it wasn't horror enough.
Sure. I mean, I get that to an extent, but I've always thought Frankenstein's more of a tragic story than a horror movie story anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What this really feels like to me, and this kind of works in with the opening scene of the movie, is we open on he's like 1794, and we see this captain trying to reach the North Pole. He's on an expedition to reach the North Pole, and it's at night, and the rain's lashing down.
Yeah.
And it really struck me rewatching this movie this time that aside from certain outdoor scenes, like they're in a forest or they're outside a house, those scenes aside, this feels so much and is lit so much like a stage play.
Yeah.
Like, so many shots of this are like, this could be on stage. You know, with like when they do the City World, like we haven't got any content, so we filmed a live performance of theatre and we're going to put it in the cinema. That's kind of how some of these scenes look. Like, the lighting is like almost stage lighting in places, and this opening is like, whoa, like it looks like it's just on a stage with some rain added. It's really effective, but it's got a weird vibe where it's almost like purposeful in its feel of like, this is on a stage, and we kind of almost purposely made it look like it's on a stage in places. It's weird. I can't quite explain it.
Well, I think I think partially, obviously, as I said, Branagh went his own way, but I think they still wanted to keep kind of the aesthetic of the Dracula movie.
Well, this one's not quite as artsy as that.
No, it's nowhere near as artsy as that. I mean,
the opening would have you think it might be, though. I'll give you that. The bit on the ship, you're like, okay, this is like, we're straight in after Dracula. We're straight in, but no. Yeah,
and I also think that the actual the interior of Dracula's house, not Dracula's house, Frankenstein's house, that big ballroomy type thing.
Yeah,
that is weirdly like a set.
Yeah, but there are some shots as well, like
in
the shot when he's reunited with Elizabeth and he runs to her and they hug and spin around.
Mm.
There's like a stage light pointing right down on both of them when they meet in the middle.
Yeah,
and it's like, I guess it's meant to be a shaft of light, but it looks like it's literally like they're on stage.
Yeah,
it's really odd. It works in a weird way, but it's just an almost intentional choice, I think. But it just feels like it could be stage acted, most of this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're following Captain Walton, I think his name is. That's what Wikipedia says. I didn't catch his name. And they're trying desperately to reach the North Pole, and like the crew are like fucking, this is insane.
Yeah,
turn around.
He's got to the mutinous stage of the expedition.
Yeah, like the first mate's like, you're you know, if you keep going, the crew are really. He's like, buddy, I am telling you, the crew are really unhappy. Like, if you keep pushing for this, you might be looking at mutiny. And he's like, did you say mutiny? It's like, your first mate's trying to warn you, buddy. Like, he's trying to do you a favor here to say, like, look, I'm with you, but seriously, this is bad, you know.
Yeah.
It's freezing cold, everyone's miserable, frostbite and all of that, you know, come on.
And as the captain played by Aidan Quinn is another one of those actors that we always think, well, I always think, you know, he's one of those actors that, though everybody kind of knows him, he's another one of those actors that should have had more work. Had a bigger career, yeah.
I agree. I think he's fantastic, and certainly towards the end of this movie, I love his performance in this. Actually, the performance with him and the monster towards the end, amazing.
I mean, he does the fanatical, you know, explorer really well, I think.
Absolutely. A lot of this movie is about obsession. And his obsession is, I'm going to be the first person to do this, you know, to reach the North Pole by boat, and we're gonna do it, and it's gonna be amazing. And everyone else is like, no, I'm not with you anymore. This is too much. But anyway, they get trapped in the ice, and they hear some frightening noises and groans, moans, I guess, coming from the darkness, and they meet Victor Frankenstein, who's fallen in the water.
No, he's on a sled.
Oh, sorry, he's on a sled. Yeah.
I really like the reveal's really cool because it's got that sort of really weird cross, which I guess must be sort of, he's using it like a sail.
Yeah.
Because it's got like all these furs hanging off of it, and he's dressed in this massive fur coat with this massive fur hood. And of course, all the superstitious sailors are all ready to shoot him. Yeah,
but lucky for him, the fucking dogs are like, no, I'm not worried about him. I'm way more concerned about that monster out there.
The dogs slip, and you know
they run, and they say, "Oh, the dogs, get the dogs!" But of course, Victor's like, they're already dead. They're
this movie does not like dogs.
No, this movie does not like dogs at all.
Because they all get super squished.
Yeah, they get dispatched quite quickly. And
I love the way that I guess it's demonstrating Victor's authority.
Yeah,
because he says, "You men, get your guns and come with me," and they all like, "Oh, all right, yeah, no problem."
Yeah, they're all like, "Sure,
buddy." They go to go. The captain's like, "Fuck off!
Anything that gets me away from this goddamn captain. You want me to hunt a yeti or whatever the hell you're out here for? Fine, I will." But yeah, like he so now even Victor is like, where are you going? You need to not do this expedition. You're gonna all die if you go out there.
Yeah.
And of course Walton's like, no, I'm determined to continue. And Victor is like, you know, do you want to share my madness, sir? Let me tell you my life story.
I understand your obsession,
but it will end in disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we kind of then go back in time and we see the life story of Victor.
Yeah, I think it moves to.
Yes, and we're introduced to the Frankenstein family. It's kind of a lovely picture of kind of upper class domestic bliss to begin with.
Massively upper class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And it's kind of a lovely setup because you meet the mother and she's super happy and she's like, oh, the baby's a bit, he's a bit lively today, but it's all good.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me. Let's go to the party.
Yeah. I think there's a really nice, even though Ian Holm and Shelley Lungi aren't really in it very much.
They're fantastic when
they're really good in the small parts they have. And I love, again, what's her name? Celia Emery is Mrs. Moretz and Justine. And as soon as Justine comes on, my brain just goes, oh, poor Justine. Because, I mean, Justine, there's usually a sort of maid in these movies that gets the wrong end at some point.
Yeah, it doesn't go well for them.
But this one is so tragic because she's clearly part of the family.
Yes.
And she obviously, and they, even though I think they don't play up too much on the sort of love triangle thing, I think other cuts have got more of just in it. But you can tell, that she loves him even from this age, and immediately you just go, oh, poor Justine.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well for you, love.
It's not going to be good for you, my dear. Yeah, but of course, we do get them very young. We see him and Elizabeth obviously meeting. Elizabeth's kind of adopted by the family. And then we cut to, suddenly Kenneth Branagh, but it's fine because he's not got a beard, so he's young.
Yeah, he's it doesn't matter that he
looks 40.
He looks 40, yeah, and his mother's like, I don't know what age.
They could almost be dating. I mean,
I think Sherry looks 8 years older than him.
I was going to say they don't look that much older, to be honest.
Yeah.
But fine, whatever.
I mean, I could just about sort of accept Ian Holm's dad.
Yeah.
But,
But
I guess you just have to think of it as this way: the older Frankenstein married her quite young, so
yeah, that's true. But already at this young age, we see that Victor Frankenstein is obsessed with work. This is before anything happens. He's already obsessed with study and his work.
He has a thirst for knowledge.
He has an insatiable thirst for knowledge. But his mother kind of pleads with him. She's like, "Hey, let's go and have fun with your guests."
Just look up from time to time. Don't let. Life is about living as well.
Don't let it pass you by just studying.
Yeah.
And he does. He decides to go down and he dances with Elizabeth, and all seems well. And then, unfortunately, his mother suddenly doubles over in pain and passes out. And then we're treated to a very brutal scene.
It's really good though.
Oh, it's fun. No, I mean brutal in a very good way. It's portrayal of that kind of brutality and the gritty realism of this failed birth is incredible. It's shocking when you first see it. Actually, there's so much blood,
and she pleads.
She pleads to save the kid.
Yeah, the child's not lying right in the womb,
and of course Henry's father is a doctor, so he's going to be delivering the baby, but he's like, I can't because I'm going to kill you, and I just can't, And
I think she says, "Cut me," doesn't she?
She's the one that insists. She insists, and meanwhile we have Elizabeth, trying to console Henry, and she's like, trying to console Victor. And she's like, it'll be fine, Victor. It'll be fine. She'll be all right.
Yeah.
But then, of course, we see that we see the father come down, and he is just.
Well, he screams, doesn't he?
Just destroyed.
Yeah.
And then of course, Victor heads upstairs,
it's used so well throughout this film. It's a very odd. But that stairway is amazing.
It's really cool, isn't it?
It's the weirdest sort of. It's completely bare. There's very little decoration in that room. There's sort of a few sort of bluish panels and things. There's no rail or anything. It's just this weird sort of like it's a very
it's fucking there's no rail. It is literally Peter Cushing's Frankenstein's fucking dream come true. Pushing motherfuckers off that all day. But no, you're right. It's a really weird looking, and as you said, it's almost a concession to that arty style of Bram Stoker's.
And like you said, stagey. It's
very stagey. Yeah.
But it looks amazing as the older Frankenstein comes down these stairs and sort of stops halfway and just collapses onto the floor, holding.
And of course, there's Ian Holm, who just
amazing,
just such a good actor, and this you really feel it every time in this because he goes through some shit in this film, and you feel it every time because he's just that good of an actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get this kind of chilling scene with Victor seeing his mother, for the first time in obviously post death.
Yeah.
And he just breaks down, and he's just like, bring her back. That's all he says over and over is just bring her back.
And I do love that everybody is concentrating on the mother except for Mrs. Moretz. Mrs. Moretz is the only one that's holding young William and trying to sort of, keep it together for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really
great scene. It's
fantastic. Scene. It really is fantastic. And it almost feels like it could just not be a Frankenstein movie. It could be a very serious film, like a very different thing. Because it is played so straight.
It's a very good period piece.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so obviously this is what sets Victor on his path.
Yeah.
As we said, he's already got this thirst for knowledge, and now his obsession is that nobody should die. Mm-hmm. Nobody should have to die. People could continue on because of science, and he goes to school, and he falls out with. He falls out with the majority of his teachers.
I love the interaction between him and Robert Hardy. Robert Hardy has an amazing. I don't know whether is Robert Hardy still alive?
I have no idea.
No, he died 2017. Sorry. So he always had this very amazing way of playing, very officious,
authoritarian, assholes.
I mean, he was. Most people would know him as Cornelius Fudge from the Harry Potter movies.
Yes,
I think these days anyway.
For sure.
But before he was. I mean, he was in Your Creature. I remember him from More Creatures Great and Small when I was a kid and stuff like that. But the banter between those two is amazing. Where he's saying about how we're interested in knowledge here, and we are only interested in the science, and we don't deal in sorcery and all that sort of stuff. And Victor Frankenstein's like above in the gallery going, well, what about this guy? And he's like, he's a heretic. He's what about this guy? A sorcerer. And he's
well, doesn't he at one point say, like, literally what you're saying is fucking illegal, mate?
Yeah.
Just stop talking.
Not only what you were talking about is not only immoral, it's illegal.
It's illegal, yeah.
And it's the first time you get a glimpse of John Cleese's Professor.
I love his performance in this movie. It's one of the few times you see John Cleese doing a proper straight performance, and he is fantastic. And I think
the weirdest thing about his performance is they wanted him to. He chose the teeth and the slight alteration of his jaw.
Yeah. So and it works because it kind of throws you at first. You're like, that sounds like John Cleese, but it doesn't quite look right.
Yeah.
And
But I also think it's slightly comical.
Yeah, so it kind of is.
At times, it verges on
Python.
Exactly.
Looks like it could be Python.
There are certain bits where you see where the teeth aren't sitting quite right in his mouth. And it just sort of you think, oh, it's beginning to verge on Python here. Steady. But he is amazing as the because he really wanted to play this completely straight.
Yeah. So
and I think he does an amazing job of it too.
We see him watching as this discussion, this heated kind of argument takes place.
Completely in this amazing shadow that they've got.
Yeah. And then of course he leaves the study with his friend Henry, and they're kind of discussing, and Henry's like, you just need to shut up because you're gonna get in trouble. Like, this is a bad, And
Tom Hulce, he's another actor that I've always thought, Tom Hulce has an amazing career, yes, but he sort of disappeared at some point, and we didn't see him for years.
Yeah, I mean, again though, he might have just ended up doing theatre or something.
Probably.
I often find with a lot of actors that you think have disappeared, they've just gone into theatre and they've done really well in theatre or voice acting or something. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you could see that Tom Hulce would be amazing in a theatre.
Yeah, totally.
I absolutely adore Amadeus. That is such a fantastic movie, and he's so Mozart.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would think you should cover that at some point, but that is a very long movie.
Yeah. I'll have to take a weekend for that one. But yeah, so Waldman,
I do like we get the first movie appearance of oh blimey, what's his name? Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't even find out my bloody notes now. Bonneville. Hugh Bonneville.
Yes.
He looking like Gaston.
yeah. He just kind of barges his way through.
Why don't you watch where I'm going?
Why don't you watch where I'm going? That's such an asshole line.
Yeah, and he this was his first movie appearance, which I did not realise.
Like, wow, I didn't know there were fucking jocks in the 1800s. But apparently,
well, of course there would have been. Yeah,
apparently there were.
Yeah,
but like stereotypes, like why don't you watch where I'm going? Is the kind of thing you'd expect from a jock in the 1980s.
I think bullies are just universal.
Of course, and he is a big dude. He's a big old dude.
He is.
But anyway, after that, Waldman does approach them, and he's like, well, I think come with me.
We get the autopsy scene first, don't we?
Oh yes, of course we do. Yeah.
So they're doing an autopsy.
This is actually, I think this is where he's finally accused of
this is where he
of illegal talk.
Yeah,
I think it's this scene now is during the autopsy
because they're
arguing bringing the dead back
because
talking about the nails growing and hair growing.
So after the first encounter with I don't know what the actual character's name is, Professor Crump. After the first encounter with him, then they leave, and Victor asks Henry who John Cleese is, and he goes by in the carriage.
Yes.
Then we go to an autopsy, and that's when
the argument happens. I love we get the student who faints.
Sorry?
I love we get the student who faints as Victor cuts the cadaver open.
I love that it's Henry, isn't it? Because he says...
Oh, is it Henry who collapses?
Yeah, because he says he gets Victor to take off the sort of the cutting, and then he says to Henry, "Now take out the brain," and he's like, "Yes, of course."
Yeah.
Henry goes down, and I love there's a bit where earlier, just before that, he's talking to Henry, and Henry says about he's getting a great education. He's good at this. The only problem is he hates sick people. He finds them revolting.
He's like, oh, this doctoring would be great if everyone wasn't so fucking ill.
Yeah, if we have to deal with the ill people, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And that's when
Waldman finally takes him aside.
Yeah, and he says first of all, he points out, he says, your own people in this very room have worked on things like this. Yeah. And of course, Waldman storms off.
I'm talking of you, sir. And he just kind of like, nope, leave me out of it. But of course, Waldman, I think Waldman only pretty much takes him under his wing to be like, look, this will end in abomination. Don't fucking do it, buddy.
Well, I think it's two things, isn't it? One, he wants to steer him into stuff,
but not that. It's like, I want to steer you towards things, but I don't want you to take it as far as I took things.
It's a sort of keep your mind open and use some of the things that I've learned,
but learn from my mistakes.
Any further than that, if
Yeah.
you go too far, you know, it will result in abomination.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what he says, isn't it? He's like, how far did you get? And Waldman's like, too far.
Yeah.
It ended in abomination.
And you get that wonderful scene where he takes them to his house and they lock the door, and he's got that gorilla's hand that he's using. And
he's kind of amazed because Victor fixes this situation.
Yeah, well,
and even he's like, "Whoa, you learn fast," you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think this is where you see it in again, wonderful performance of Cleese, that you see it in his face that he's kind of slightly afraid of how well Victor.
Yeah, I think he sees a lot of himself in Victor.
The hand crush. You know, he says that touch the hand, and they all touch the hand, and of course it shakes Henry's hand, and then it
grabs poor Henry.
He manipulates it again, and it
and this kind of sets up the fact that these undead creatures are super strong as well. It kind of immediately is like, I mean, obviously this is a gorilla's hand, so I guess you could argue, but yeah, it starts crushing his hand, and you know, Waldman's like, I can't fix this. Like, it's just too bad. I guess you'll just have to have your hand crushed.
Yeah, that's it. You know, sorry, chum.
But Victor's like, hey, if we just apply electricity here, it'll, you know, and he immediately releases him. And like you said, you can see in Cleese's face, he's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Quick
learner, and also, like you said, slightly worried because he's like, oh, you're learning too fast and you're too much like me. I think this is going to go badly. And arguably, if Waldman was around, maybe this all would have been fine. I doubt it, but maybe. Yeah. But we then see as
we forgot one of the scenes. We forgot one of the scenes which always makes me think of oh, for fuck's sake, Sound of Music. We forgot the scene where they're on the mountain.
Oh god, yeah. I see. It made me think of fucking Highlander. Actually,
it always makes me think of the Sound of Music.
No, I get that. I totally get that.
They got the Justine and
they find a cloud,
Liam, and they do the thing with the electricity. And that does sort of make me laugh, that scene, but it also it's kind of a cool scene when you get all the electricity.
It's cool, yeah. It is cool. It's kind of like, again, it kind of foreshadows his obsession.
Yeah.
As Elizabeth's like, you knew this was going to be here, and he was like, I didn't know, but I pretty much assumed it probably would be, you know.
Yeah, you can see that he's more than happy to put them in danger if it means he learns something, because he's
putting his science before anyone else.
Yeah, there were two women and a vulnerable child there.
Yeah, and he didn't think about that, did he?
No.
That could have gone a very different way, but luckily,
exploding children. That would have been great.
But there's cholera. The cholera is doing the rounds, and they're Dr. Waldman is performing vaccinations. They all are. They're all there giving vaccinations. And that bastard Robert De Niro is having none of it. And he's like, you said cholera. By the way, we'll get to this a little later, and I appreciate there's a cholera outbreak.
Yes.
But fuck me, the people that live in this village. You have not seen an angry mob form faster than in this fucking town. Like, immediate angry mob.
Well, I'm guessing my thought on that is that the tensions are already high.
Oh yeah, no, totally. It's just like it is like instant mob.
Yeah. Don't go to Ingolstadt. They're really highly strung.
yeah, very highly strung. And you could blame it on the cholera, like there is an epidemic, and fine. But anyway, Robert De Niro's character, I don't know if he's got a name in this scene, but he's basically just saying, like, you said cholera, you're going to give us cholera, and he's like, no, I'm giving you a vaccination without which this entire town is going to be quarantined. Like, you need this.
Cleese is like, he's obviously had to do this all day.
Oh god, he's
explain to these
tired.
people-
He's exhausted.
Yeah,
yeah.
and he's not really paying attention to him. He says, "You have to do this. It's the law."
Yeah.
And of course,
and he's just saying, "You're not going to stick that with me. You're not going to stick that in me."
you doctors are murderers.
Yeah. And then to prove the point that doctors are murderers, he stabs the doctor.
Yeah. He takes a knife hidden in his crutch.
Yeah. And stabs. John Cleese, who has a complete look on his face. Like you said, I don't think he was paying enough attention to read the room and realise what the fuck he was doing there.
No, he's not. He's not really looking at it when he pulls the knife.
The guy was clearly unhinged. But yeah, so he gets stabbed, and Victor and Henry rush
they
to
take him to the autopsy room, don't they, and try.
Yeah, and you get that shot of Kenneth Branagh just pounding on him and just willing him to live, and Henry's like the guy's gone, like he is done. But of course, Victor is like, why him? Like he was, he saw him as the key to everything, really, because he had the forbidden knowledge. And he thinks, obviously he thinks it's unjust that someone with such a brain should die. Someone with such a wonderful brain.
And again, like you said, it immediately speaks to how obsessed he is, because his next thought is literally, "I'm going to break into his house."
yeah.
And see how far he got.
Yeah.
He's not stopping me now. I can.
Yeah, there's now no one's there to say no, apart from Henry, who just I ain't gonna listen to anyway.
Poor Henry is like the most ineffectual dude. He's so lovely, but he's completely outclassed. It's like you stand no chance of convincing this dude of anything, my friend.
Yeah. But yes, so he finally has access to the notes,
and we see them hang De Niro's. I don't know why. I guess I've always thought of him as a thief.
Well, I think he's meant to be.
I think he's just, a crippled guy. He's probably just some dude, He's probably nothing horrible about him. He's just a very scared dude.
Yeah, possibly.
But they, he's screaming at the crowd that you're all killers.
It's like, dude, the only one who has actually done a murder is you.
Yeah.
You keep calling everyone murderers, but the only one that's actually done a murder is you. I guess he's like some wild conspiracy theorist. I guess that's what he's, his thing is like, you have done the murders.
At the time, doctors did kill
they got things wrong.
Percentage of their patients, because medicine at that time wasn't great.
It wasn't the best. No, exactly.
They hadn't quite worked out about, disease, proper way diseases work and bacteria and stuff yet.
Yes. Apologies for all the noise if people can hear that, by the way. My cat's been ill for a long time and he's feeling better now, so he is being like as big of a pain as he possibly can. Jumping up, jumping down, getting in the way. He's like, hey, I feel better now. I want attention.
Yeah.
Because he's one of those, like, when he feels ill, he tends to hide himself away a bit. So now he's back with a vengeance. Not that I mind, of course. He's in that grace period where he could be a complete pain in the ass, because I'm just glad he's okay.
Yes.
Next week I'll be like, for fuck's sake, don't just. But yes, so now he is, he's not going to be stopped now. And we did miss, I think we missed one scene which kind of establishes that early on, Victor's writing these lovely letters back to the family.
Oh, of course, yes.
Back to Elizabeth, and she gets this quite raunchy kind of ending to a letter where he's talking about, them getting married. And
I do like, because we forgot the setting up of his lab as well in that amazing.
Oh my god, what an incredible set!
Yeah, his lab is amazing.
Yeah, I like when he rents the place. He's like, I'm gonna have stuff coming in here for like 2 weeks. I've got a big lab coming.
Yeah, and the landlady has that dog.
Yeah, dog.
And part of the letter is that he says he's in love.
Yeah.
And of course everybody's like, what? Hey,
Ian
what?
Holmes disgusted.
Yeah. And it's like, she's got a lovely brown coat and she wags her tail every time I see her. It is really sweet.
It is really sweet. But yeah, so we kind of get that because we come back to that later when it turns out that Elizabeth has started faking letters because she hasn't had any back.
Yeah, because his position means he's just been
locking himself away. But now that he's got the notes, and he's realized that Waldman got pretty far, far enough. He learns that electricity is the key, and he realizes that he can generate electricity with the eels, and he basically pays off the morgue, where all the cholera. Well, I don't even know if it's a morgue at that point. It's probably just a dumping ground for cholera patients, or dead people.
I'm guessing I presume it's a morgue.
I'm guessing so. Later we see them just lining the streets, so I don't know. Yeah.
I noticed this time. I've never noticed before. The body he gets the leg off.
Yes.
Is Bonneville's.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Oh. It's he obviously died of cholera.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when they pull the
that's a nice link. Kind of morbid, but kind of nice. I didn't realize that.
That's him. I never noticed before that it was him.
So he starts taking body parts from cholera victims. But of course he decides he needs a really good brain, and this kind of harkens back to the original movie as well, where it's like, we need a brilliant brain. Obviously in the original, fucking Fritz comically drops the good brain and then picks up the murderer brain.
I think that's the other problem with the original one as well, is it in my mind. It verges into Young Frankenstein, so you get the adult.
Yeah, well, Young Frankenstein did kind of ruin a little bit of that movie.
Yeah, it did a bit, just slightly.
But
I can't think about that scene without thinking about Abby Normal.
No, that's fair. But
as we previously did done on the show, the Hammer Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He purposely kills.
Oh yeah.
I presume it's the same guy. I think it's Waldman in that as well.
It's certainly. Do you know who's never turned up since? Is Dr. Pretorius.
Yes.
But yes, Waldman. I think it might.
I wonder why.
I love fucking Dr. Pretorius. So
I do as well, but he's such a weird character.
He's such a wacky bit of the movie. Honestly, if people have never seen it, you should watch the movie. But if you can't be bothered, just watch YouTube clips of Dr. Pretorius, because the actor is just hamming up the scene. So
there have been weird versions of Frankenstein that have used Pretorius, but he's never been as odd. I don't think.
No. But you might be right. I think it might be Waldman that he pushes off the stairs.
Yeah.
I always thought that was weird. Well, I guess we've covered it, but.
Yeah.
Always thought it was weird that he's like, I need a brilliant brain from this professor. I'll push him off the stairs and let him land on his head.
I know, like, that's what we said at the time. It's like he goes straight on his fucking skull. It's a great shot. Well, that fucking brain isn't going to be any good, is it?
No. But here, Victor has a moment. He has a moment as he's getting Waldman's brain. He kind of doubts himself for a second, but then he's like, these are parts, nothing more. They're discarded parts, and I need the best brain I can. It's not Waldman anymore. It's just a brain. It's a part of the puzzle I need. And so he assembles a creature out, based on the notes and the bits of cadaver and whatnot. And of course, as we said, he's not speaking to anyone really. Not speaking to Elizabeth. We get a point when even Henry, who's not even allowed in the lab anymore, is knocking on the door, and he's like, dude, we're going to be quarantined for cholera, man. Like, we need to go. Like, we need to leave. And of course, I think it's Elizabeth's friend that Justine. Is it Justine that's like, hey, you need to go to him? Like, I would have gone if it was my guy.
If he was mine, I'd already be there.
Yeah.
He's not. He's yours.
So Victor tells Henry to fuck off, but when he hears it's Elizabeth, he's like, I probably should open the door. So he opens the door, and she immediately just wants to walk in the lab, and he immediately, like, one of the first things he said to her in months, he's just like, don't go in there.
Don't go in there.
they have an argument, and she says, "Look, you know, I'm done with this. Like, you know, this is too much." And she runs out crying. And of course, then Victor opens a door, and we see that the body's just under a, you know, he's basically assembled his creature now, and it's basically under the, I don't know.
Yeah, he's got the I like that the shot of him sat in that chair with all these like drips coming, you know, putting the amniotic fluid into him, and it's got that's all on that ring above his head.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool shot. I really love that.
Very cool.
And it does remind me of the Bernie Wrightson version of Frankenstein, which is amazing.
Yeah. So Victor, you know, decides he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And you know, wonderful scene with the eels, and that whole setup is just really awesome.
Yeah. And again, I think we haven't really mentioned it yet either. The music in this movie is amazing.
I love it. It's quite understated in places, but when it comes in, it's really haunting. It's got a
beautiful sort of love, like the love theme and all that stuff. It's really beautiful. But when it really ramps up, it's amazing. And right here, when he does, awesome. Like, that's it. He commits himself.
Yeah,
and you see him,
and he gets topless and sweaty again.
Again, this is the thing. I was going to say, this is he utterly adores himself in this scene because
he's like, oil me up,
oiled up, sweaty, you know, chest. And he's got this like huge robe which seems to have come from nowhere.
Yep.
And he just starts like, you know, tearing down this lab and just pulling things out and moving things around, and the whole pulley system for moving
awesome.
the creature around, which I don't think we're supposed to call it a creature, are we? I think the creation, I think, is what
Wikipedia says the creature.
Yeah,
but I think you're right.
I think he didn't want it to be called a creature or a monster. I think he wanted to be called a creation sort of thing. And the whole
he is. Robert De Niro is officially cast as the creation. You're right.
Yeah, and that massive like copper drum they've got.
Yeah,
you know,
it looks amazing.
Filled up with amniotic fluid, and like that's a lot of amniotic fluid. Where the hell? I know you do see him collecting it at times. You think still.
Again, I think there's passage of time that we're not really seeing.
Yeah, clearly. But it does also make me think: how long does that stay fresh? I mean, I don't know. But
how does any of this work? I mean, he cut a brain out of a long dead man and just chucked it in some ice. He's like, "I'll do. Don't worry about it. It's fine."
Yeah.
But yes, so on a very topless, sweaty night, Victor performs his experiment, and we get this great shot where he's just on top of the thing, which you'd think would be really dangerous because the amount of electricity that's flowing through it and coming off of it, and sparks everywhere. But he's just shouting and pounding as he can see the creature's eyes. He's just screaming, "Live, live!"
We also get, we get the there is a moment when he's talking to Cleese's doctor about and he's saying about Chinese medicine. He's looked into Chinese medicine.
Yes, and electricity being the key there. Yeah.
So you see him when he's setting up this drum. He puts these massive needles through these holes.
Through the holes, yeah.
Into his like feet and his
his head as well, like the top of his skull.
And you see all these the shot of the when you see the bag full of eels.
Yeah.
That sort of like almost like a giant bladder.
Yeah.
Full of eels above the tub, and it's just like writhing. That is a great shot. It's a awesome. Really awesome prop.
It's a really cool. The whole set piece is just amazing. Fantastic. But yeah, so finally the creature does open his eyes, and you know he's ecstatic. But as he jumps down, he looks inside, and the monster's unmoving. And suddenly he thinks he's failed, and he becomes quite emotional, and upset until the monster pounds on the side of the glass. And what I like about this depiction, as opposed to the original, and obviously the Hammer one, obviously, is that we get this scene where he frees the monster from the machine, and
he explodes out of that.
He explodes out of it, and they have a very oily homoerotic moment on the floor.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is, he helps the monster up, but then the monster immediately attacks him, or the creation immediately attacks him.
Well,
and he ends up hung up on the thing. But
I don't think he is attacking him. I just think he's just so unsteady and doesn't know what he's doing. I think he's just grabbing him.
I don't know. I thought he did kind of lunge at him at one point, but maybe. I mean, he's just scared and confused, obviously. But
yeah.
But what I like about this depiction is, unlike previous depictions, generally, Frankenstein's very pleased with his creation at first. He's like, "Oh my god, I've done it! It's amazing." Whereas here, almost immediately, Branagh's Frankenstein's like, "The fuck have I done?"
Yeah.
It's like he was so obsessed, he never took a step back, and now he's finally done it. He takes this step back, and he's like, "Fuck." I've really messed this. Like, what have I done? Yeah. This is a terrible idea.
Also, I think he wanted too much from it.
He wanted it to come out talking and
he expected it to be a fully formed person.
Yeah,
and
considering the way it looks, that's probably a good thing that it's not, dude. Like,
yeah.
As well as we kind of see later with Elizabeth. To be fair,
he's childlike. He's literally been born again, sort of thing, and I think the his reaction to him is it's just pity and
yeah. Well, he even says that, doesn't he? He says it's pitiful and a failed experiment, basically.
But he sort of you get that because I think at this point as well he's beginning to fall into illness as well.
Yes, well, or exhaustion. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's exhaustion, and I think when he wakes up later on, Henry says, I think he had pneumonia. I think.
Yeah.
And
so he kind of passes out after this.
He has that sort of
dream,
fever dream of Hardy's doctor saying, "You fool, Victor Frankenstein. What did you think you were going to do? What did you you playing God?" And it swirls around him, and I love that. That's another great little scene with.
It's really good, yeah. It's really cool. While he's having that dream, the creature escapes. It steals one of Victor's awesome coats. Victor has a lot of awesome coats in this.
He does, yeah. He's got the big coat.
But he flees the lab,
and we see him before that when he writes about the it resulting results in an abomination.
Yeah.
He closes the book and he says about he's going to destroy it all, and then
That's really weird that he says that out loud. That feels very stagey as well.
It does, yep. And I think there's a number of lines in this movie that are very like that.
It's like stage-like, isn't it?
Talking
to the audience
in a stage, like a stage play.
Yeah.
And he puts the diary into the coat pocket.
Yes. This will come in useful later.
Yeah, this will come in.
So yes, of course, the creature has stolen the coat that has the book in it, and we see kind of the following morning, the creature's kind of in an alleyway, kind of hiding away, trying to find some food to eat. Mm-hmm. And finally he heads out into town in a big hood, kind of trying to hide. But he tries to steal some bread, and the market stall owner is like, "The fuck are you doing?" But then she sees his face and she's like, "Oh my god, it's cholera man. He's the man that started the cholera.
It's the walking embodiment of cholera."
Yes, it's him. And then immediate lynch mob forms. Although I'd be like, well, I'll lynch him, but I'm not touching the fucking guy. Let him go.
We'll lynch him with sticks
Just
from a
lynch
distance.
him with some spear him from a great distance. But yeah, so they obviously chase after him, and this is kind of his first interaction with humans. Is like Henry, who's like, Victor, who's like, he's a failed experiment, a monstrosity.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now, I guess he probably didn't understand language very well at that point, but of course now he realizes that everyone's horrified by his appearance and trying to lynch him. And
you also think, I also have thought with Victor and the the rejection stuff, it's like, he's not really that scientific.
No,
because he doesn't sort of think, well, I'll put him aside for now, and we'll retest him later, just to give him a bit of time. It's immediately, it's like, no, he's shit. Throw him away.
He's rubbish.
He's rubbish. Yeah, he's rubbish. Let's put him in his box, and that's it. No, he's not terribly scientific at all.
Well, I kind of thought the point was that he's also realised that maybe what he's doing is quite horrific. Like, it suddenly dawned on him all of a sudden that actually.
That is very true. It is, the whole abomination and heresy type stuff. Yeah, of course. But it
does kind of come across like that, though. You're right.
It does also, it comes across as like, well, fuck it, he's shit.
He's just crap. But yeah, so
again, which is the complete opposite to when you think of Peter Cushing's Frankenstein, who's like, right, that's it. We need to move on to the next one now.
That was my time to move on to Beta.
This one's shit. I want to get it right next time.
Yeah.
I mean, Cushing's Frankenstein never gets over his obsession.
No, that's kind of his trait, though, isn't it? Is that
he is just a complete psychopath.
And no monster is ever going to be perfect for that Frankenstein. It's always just a stepping stone to the next one, which will be better.
I think he could literally do make an almost perfect human, and he will still find flaws with it, because that's just the way that Frankenstein works.
Frankenstein created woman. He practically did make a normal looking human.
Yes, yeah.
He kind of did. But I mean, that's the thing. He's kind of like Tony. He's kind of like Tony Stark with his Iron Man suits, where he's never going to be happy.
Always trying to make the next perfect one. Yeah. The created woman stuff gets weird with.
It does. I love that movie though.
Yeah, that moves far beyond just cadavers. And...
Yes, it does. Admittedly, it does. So the monster ends up running from the mob, and he manages to hide in a pile of cholera dead bodies.
Dead people, yeah.
And escapes the village that way. As we see the kind of crowds just kind of miss him, because obviously he's just in with a bunch of bodies.
And he ends up jumping on top of a death cart, doesn't he?
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, he jumps on the death cart, and because of course he hides in the alley with the dead bodies, and then he jumps on the death cart, and they take him out of the village. So he escapes to the country.
Is that when he first finds the book, or is that? Oh no, that's later, isn't it?
I think he finds it now, doesn't he? Because he escapes to the barn, and that's when he finds it in his pocket and starts reading it, isn't it? So he kind of escapes to the outskirts. I guess it's the outskirts of the village, into the woods.
I presume it's sort of little outside village, isn't it?
Yeah, and he finds this family barn, or just farm home, I guess, and he kind of sees them outside.
Pigsty.
That's right, and the youngest, or the son, sorry, the son goes out to feed the pigs. And he goes to hide in the barn.
It's the actual dad.
Well, yeah, sorry, it's the son of the.
Oh yeah, of course.
What I meant. Sorry, sorry. I guess the middle one.
Yes.
The middle generation. He heads out to feed the pigs. And of course, the creation is scared and hides in the barn, and he's hiding as he puts down the food. But of course, as soon as he leaves, the creation's like, "Get out of the way, pigs! This is my food. I need this," and starts obviously eating the food. And we get these wonderful things. Now, one of my favorite scenes of Bride of Frankenstein is Frankenstein with the blind man. Now, obviously, in Bride, it's just a blind man, no family. It's just a blind man on his own until they're discovered. Here, there's a family, and I really love it here as well, because he kind of becomes like, what do they call him? The creature, the
spirit of the forest.
Spirit of the forest. And he learns to read from reading the books, and he learns language from listening to them, and
and he learns to read actually from them, because the mother's teaching the daughter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
With a slate and some chalk, and he's listening to their lessons.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a moment where they're trying to get in the harvest, and it's winter is coming, and they're trying to get it in as much as possible.
Yeah.
The ground's so frozen that they can't dig out the vegetables, and of course, you know, he says to his wife, you know, we're not going to have enough, and she says, you know, just sell another pig, and he's like, we can't do that.
Well, yeah, we literally, if we do that, we're screwed.
Also,
we're screwed in
can't
that direction.
get into town right now because it's closed. And so I nearly called him the monster as well. So it's
easily done after years of, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The creation basically has no problem pulling out the vegetables from the frozen ground, and he literally pulls pretty much everything up.
Yeah, well, they come out the next morning and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Full of it.
Yeah, and this is where we get the, you know, spirit of the forest thing.
You know, wonderful Richard Briers, as the grandfather says, you know,
yes,
must be the spirits of the forest helping us out.
And of course, his son's like, no such thing.
Yeah, don't touch shit.
Well, he's kind of right though. He's like, hey, nothing happens in this world without a price.
Yeah,
and he is right.
And I think we also see that when he, even though he's a blind man, but in a sort of daredevil way, he can sense the presence of De Niro in the pigsty, because the pigsty is literally connected.
Well, I guess he can hear him, and he's also you know, he's aware of Victor, and he's not afraid of Victor, and like you kind of get the feeling that Victor is kind of aware that he's aware in some weird way, because later on he's like, hey, everyone's scared except for you.
Victor.
Sorry, the creation. He's like, hey, you know, this, you know, everyone's scared of me except for you. Like, he kind of knows that the old man's gonna be okay to him, you know. But yeah, so time kind of goes on, and you know, it's all good, except they have not paid the rent.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, well, we'll get back to that, because meanwhile, Victor's having a great time. They're gonna get married. They you know, he wakes up, he's reunited with Elizabeth, and everything's wonderful. They've gone back home to Geneva.
Well, Henry's passed. See, this is the one thing another of those things you think. So Henry's passed, and Victor's like, "Oh, I'm going back home. I'm going to do a practice. I'm going to continue my father's practice, and there's a position for you, you know, to come with us if you want, sort of thing."
Yeah. Yes. To be clear, he's passed an exam. He's not passed away.
No. Yes. Right,
I just realised we're saying he passed. It's like, oh, hang on a minute.
He's got his doctorate.
Yes.
It never actually says whether Victor did.
No, I guess it's assumed he did.
But that's
he's so obsessed with the monster, like maybe not. I don't know.
When did he? Because he spent all of his time in his lab. When did he go back to school?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. And you'd think he'd probably see that as beneath him at that point as well. So who knows? Yeah. I guess they're probably just happy they've got him back, and like whatever, you know.
Yeah. And I'm sure there were plenty of doctors that didn't have doctorates that were practicing back then.
You would imagine, right?
I mean, let's face it, back then surgeons were barbers.
That's very true, and on boats, cooks were also surgeons.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, God knows what. Anyone with a knife will do. Anyone with a knife or a pair of scissors.
You can cut up a good.
You can cut things. Chicken that's fine.
And a cow.
Yeah, you can cut hair.
Fix this wounded sailor.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you know, unfortunately, this little family out in the woods, they've not been paying their rent. Mm-hmm. And this asshole debtor turns up.
Yeah, and the little girl says to him, "Are you the spirit of the forest?"
He's like,
he says, "Not exactly."
And he like pushes her and stuff. He's really mean.
Yeah. He's like clearly a dick.
Yeah. So she, you know, he barges his way in and starts having a go at the old man, pushes the old man down, and he's saying, you know, don't blame me, blame your son. He should have paid the rent and all of this.
Yeah, the rest of the family are in the fields, so that's
right. They've gone for like a picnic or something.
Away, aren't they?
Maybe they've gone to get rent money. Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, he goes. I don't know why, but he walks towards the barn. Mistake. As the creature comes out and grabs him.
It's not the barn. It's actually the house.
Is it the house he's in? I thought it was the barn he was in.
It's the house. He comes out of the house because he basically lifts him up and smashes him
into the entranceway, kind of.
Yeah.
And then of course the blind man comes into the house with him, and they have their first conversation, which is where he says, why didn't you sort of make yourself known to us? And he said, because I'm hideous and everyone else is so beautiful.
People are afraid of me.
He also makes a point of saying how beautiful everyone else is, and
we actually haven't mentioned the actual look of the creation.
No, and I will say I love that in these parts we start to see him heal, like he starts taking his stitches start coming out and stuff.
That's pulling the stitches is really useful. I do like that, and
I like the look for its own thing. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I agreed. They obviously wanted to go a lot more of a human look.
I think it was so sensible to completely deviate from Karloff, because that looks
I think
so
no one's
iconic.
allowed to use that, but Universal anyway. They've got a strict. Cease and desist on anybody who tries to make it look like.
Yes, they do. But I think whenever Hammer did their new modern Star Trek where they're 20% different, it's fine.
Yeah.
Whenever Hammer did that, it was always no, it just looks like you're trying to do that, and it's not a good idea.
I don't think that's true of Christopher Lee's monster.
Oh, there was one that I thought was
there's there's the one. Is it the Horror of Frankenstein? I think with Prowse plays the monster. He's very flat top and
yeah,
he's not green.
I mean, there were multiple monsters, but that's the one that comes to mind as being the closest.
The Lee version is horrific. He's very clearly dead.
Yeah.
He's very clearly an animated corpse.
Oh yeah. He's rotting away in the face.
Mm-hmm.
He's got face rot.
And I think some of the scarring on De Niro's creature look similar to the scarring on Lee's version. But he's clearly alive.
Yes.
De Niro's monster, because he's like you said, he's
healing, and
the scars are healing, and
it's a wonderful makeup.
They're really severe.
They are, and I will say this is the first scene where you really see it. But De Niro's fucking acting in this prosthetic is amazing.
Really good.
He's incredible in this scene. I was like, wow.
Apparently he looked into stroke victims.
Okay.
To get how they to see how they spoke.
That kind of makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have this
wonderful. And I must say, I am not the biggest De Niro fan. I'm not.
I am in the right role.
I know he's a great actor, and he's one of those actors that I've never been a massive fan of. And I do remember when this movie came out, I was like, oh, De Niro is the monster. I can't see it. But when you see this movie, I think all doubts are completely removed, because
it's so different from a lot of his other roles.
A great, creature. He's wonderful.
He's fantastic, yeah, and I think he's fantastic in this scene.
And he plays it with genuine pathos, and and I think you genuinely feel sorry for this guy who's
absolutely
utterly no fault of his own. Just been treated like shit and completely disowned by his father. As it were. Yeah,
and he, we had this wonderful moment, as we did in the Bride of Frankenstein. We get the bit with the blind man saying, "Hey, I can feel with my hands," and he can see with my hands, and he feels his face, and he says, "Oh, you poor man." And but unfortunately, while this conversation's been going on, the daughter, perfectly innocent, runs and screams, and of course the family come, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "She attacked him. She attacked Grandpa. He attacked Grandpa." But of course, meaning the fucking debt collector.
And of course, you hear the debt collector scream as
as he gets mushed into the
So yeah, quite right. Quite rightly.
Assumptions are made.
They run in and think it's him attacking the father.
Yeah, and of course before this, you get this heartbreaking moment now where he's kind of beaten with a stick until he leaves, and of course the whole time the old man's like, let him go,
yeah,
let him go.
No, it's not him.
But the son is like, we need to leave. We're leaving. Like, it's too dangerous here. We're leaving.
This is a bit that's a bit muddled because you sort of think, well,
how much time was he crying outside?
Yeah, one, how much time was he crying? But two, where is the landlord?
I assumed he was dead somewhere. That's why I thought it was the barn.
Dead.
See, that's why I thought it was the barn, not the house, because I thought he killed him in the barn. And then they ran in through the front door of the house, because otherwise they tripped over the fucking debt collector.
But that's what I've always thought. I've always thought it was the house that he comes out of, and his body should just be in the doorway.
Yeah, in which case they just stepped over this. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, you now think, well, anybody who goes to this house afterwards, are they going to find the body and think they killed the rent?
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of look a bit suspicious, right? Presumably the debt collectors will send more people who will then find the dead debt collector and assume, they murdered him.
A warrant for this poor family running away.
Yeah. But we get this wonderful scene because earlier they left a little gift package for him, including this flower, and he loved the flower, and he sees the flower and he's wailing. It's such a heartbreaking scene when he's crying there. And then he sees it and he just has this moment, and I guess he's like, in his brain he's like, if I take this flower back, they'll know it was me and that I'm a nice person. And it's really janky because, like, how long ago, like you said, how long was he outside for? It makes no sense, but it's a wonderful scene when he gets back to the house and he sees no one's there. They've gone. And he's left his
taken everything and gone.
So he gets super mad and he starts reading the book again, which he's been reading because he's been learning to reading Victor's diary. But he decides, and again, it's like, I'm telling the audience, I'm out for revenge. And he's going to kill he's going to get revenge upon Frankenstein. And of course, he reads that he lives in Geneva, which apparently is enough information for him to start walking in a direction. Until he gets to Geneva. He just walks there somehow. Without asking anyone for directions, or because he has a complete inability to ask for directions or approach anyone, but somehow motherfucker walks in a straight line and ends up in Geneva.
I mean, you could generously say that
he found a map on the way or something.
No, I was thinking the information is in his brain already.
Okay. Maybe a latent image, a latent memory from Dr. Waldman. Yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
If you're being generous, because he later on he does say to Victor about he's playing the flute sort of thing, and he says,
oh yes, the blind man plays the flute.
Did you know I could do that? I didn't know I could do that. It just came to me.
Yeah, okay. Oh no, that's fine. We'll go with that.
And I think he learns. He kind of learns, but he remembers the stuff already, sort of thing. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's almost like relearn, just like waking up those old passages, I guess.
I think that's fair. I'll give you that one. We'll go with that because that does actually.
And I am being very generous.
No, it works. It works. That's fine. I like that. So and it's an awesome image of him just walking to these places.
That was one of those moments where, so that's the shot of him going over the mountains in the snow.
Yeah,
is such a great shot.
It's fantastic.
And when I went to see Lord of the Rings later, and they're doing that going over the mountains scene, I immediately went, oh, it's like the really cool shot in Frankenstein.
Yeah, well, it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
It kind of is.
I don't think there was probably many people that thought that.
No, probably not. No.
But because I don't think a lot of, I think this movie kind of disappeared, didn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people haven't seen this one.
So it's one of those movies that people don't remember very well, or just haven't seen.
But anyway, like you said, great scene as he walks to Geneva, and somehow finds his way to the Frankenstein estate. Like we said, Victor's returned to marry Elizabeth, and or he's on his way, isn't he, at this point?
Yeah.
Because the creature turns up because he burns down the house, the old, the house in the woods.
Again, that is a wonderful shot of him.
Oh yeah, that could be a great
stood
painting.
in front of the burning house.
Yeah.
It's a great shot.
Of course, in Bride of Frankenstein, it's kind of a tussle with thugs that causes a fire that burns the house down. Whereas here, obviously, it's purposely burnt. So he heads to Geneva and he finds the estate. And he's playing the flute, isn't he? He starts playing the flute on the estate or near the estate. And William, Victor's brother, younger brother, sees him and he's kind of terrified of him.
Rightly so at this point.
Well, that is the last we see of him alive. Although he is very bad at playing dead. We'll get to that,
that kid
in a little bit.
I also think
boy is clearly alive in
Helena
both shots of him.
Carter is as well.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah, she's not great either. No, she's not great either. And there's even less of an excuse for her. The child I will allow.
You can definitely, small children are not very good at staying still for a long period of time.
They find the kid dead because Victor comes back and he's all happy to see Ian Holm and he's like, "Hey, I'm home. I can't wait to get married." And Ian Holm's like, "Oh, I got some real bad news for you. Our son is missing."
So they all poor,
as you said, poor Justine.
Poor Justine, she gets sort of separated from them.
She's looking for him so much that she passes out from exhaustion.
Yeah, she's gone so far away from the other parties. She's on her own, and she ends up in this barn.
Yeah,
and she
passes out, and of course, the creation finds her asleep, and of course puts the pendant on her, which is the pendant that William had, young William, and of course
it's a portrait of him, isn't it?
It's a portrait of him. But of course they know that it was on William. Elizabeth comes back around this point with the dead body, the not dead body. His hands are still moving in this shot. And then the next scene, they put the thing over him and his eyes are moving and it's like, this kid cannot play dead at all. But you're right, it's kind of acceptable when you think how bad Helen Bonham Carter is later.
Yeah.
Kind of acceptable. But yes, so officers turn up and they're like, we found the killer.
Yeah.
And she had this on her. I believe this belongs to you. And they're like, we need you to come with us right now, sir. So of course they all head out, and they're like, this can't be right. But of course when they get there,
and of course, crowds obviously in Geneva are as bad as they are in England.
Yeah, everywhere in this world, they're like, right, immediate mob, and they're like, what I love is the mob happens, and they're gonna kill Justine. They're like, we're gonna hang Justine because she did the murder for sure, with no evidence, and somehow words got around. I don't even know how words got around, but it just did.
Now there is basis of this because I remember reading about stories of like a child murder and the crowd being so incensed when somebody pointed someone out, they dragged him from a carriage and killed him, and he had no.
He was just passing by on a carriage.
He was just a passing stranger. So
I'm sure it does happen.
Crowds go mental. The idea, I think, of a child killed is so abhorrent that I think.
I just find it weird that he was killed on a private estate, and yet somehow the whole town knows and are taking her to justice.
They do say nothing travels faster than bad news.
Well, apparently it's instant. It's like a hive mind. But I love that. But they get there. They're like, "You gotta stop this!" And the policeman's like, "It's a mob now.
Yeah,
nothing I can do about it."
Yeah, he's literally like, "Fuck that! I'm not getting involved." It's like, it's your fucking job.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No,
he's not going to stop.
Not really.
But at the same time, it is literally his job.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just like, nah,
at
that's a mob.
Try maybe. Just,
nah.
And I mean,
she's screaming for help at this point. By the way, she's like, I was trying to find him. I don't know what's going on.
And I don't think I've seen Trevor McDowell. I don't think I've seen her in anything else. She's really good in this.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Her
terror is palpable. She's they're dragging this poor girl off.
Yeah,
and it's like they find the biggest wall in Geneva to drop her off.
Yeah, the hanging wall of Geneva.
They take her up to that bloody the top of that wall, and they full on drop her.
Oh she's instant. I mean, in fairness, they gave her a pretty quick death, I imagine.
Yeah,
that was a broken.
That's fair. I guess that's true. Yeah, you could. I mean,
if nothing else.
I mean, she probably would have been decapitated by that drop. But...
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a drop.
But yeah, poor fucking.
It's almost like these people have done this before.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll take them to the hanging wall.
Maybe that's it. They've got form. They've done this before.
But anyway, Victor is pretty sure. He's like, I think I know what's responsible for this.
Yeah.
He's got a feeling. But as he heads home, the creature actually just walks up behind him.
Yeah.
And he's like, yep, I done that. I did that. And he
Sea of Ice.
Meet me. Is it beyond the Sea of Ice? Is what he says.
Ice,
it's a really cool line. And he kind of points, just in case he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So he does, and it's weird because the movie ends in ice, and you're kind of like, is this the same?
Yeah.
Because at this point you're like, oh, is this the end bit that we're catching up with now? But of course it's a different place, so you're like, no, it can't be. It's just another.
No, it'll be in the Alps, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, he heads up there, and of course again Elizabeth's like, what? Because like Elizabeth is completely knows nothing of any of it, right? She doesn't know he created a monster. She doesn't know a goddamn thing. She's like, where the fuck are you going? Like, what is going on? My best friend's just been hanged in town. And you're now leaving again.
Well,
and
like
telling
worse
me
than that, she's almost literally a family member that's just been
practically family. Yeah, practically family.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're leaving me again. And you're going with guns. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, you just trust me.
Those are really nice multi-barreled pistols as well.
They're very nice, yeah. They certainly have money though.
So, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So he rides off and he's like, yeah, just wait here for me. I'll be back. And he heads up, and of course the creature. I guess I'm assuming the creature was stalking him from the moment he left.
Yeah,
the creature knows where he is.
Yeah.
And basically
doesn't even manage to get a shot off, does he?
No. The monster takes him straight out and knocks him out, but doesn't kill him. And when he comes to, he wakes up and they have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Victor's like, you killed my brother.
Yeah.
He doesn't really mention the servant, but like,
no,
you could have mentioned Justine as well, who was unfairly killed because of it. It's the creature who actually says, yeah, I killed 2 people. And he says, you gave me these emotions, but you didn't tell me how to deal with them.
Yeah.
What to do with them. Because he asks, like, he was like, you killed my brother, William. And he's like, yeah, I grabbed him with one hand. I lifted him above my head by the neck, and I just crushed his neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, this is you. This is on you. Like, you created me. You created this.
You didn't stay around to find out anything about me or to try.
And he's right. You didn't even give him like 10 minutes, dude. You were like,
exactly,
faulty.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
He literally just goes,
You're
no,
right.
he's shit, and like runs away.
Yeah. He's like, oh well, fuck it. So, he's like, he has a point. And to be fair, if the monster hadn't murdered a child by this point, I'd be with him.
Yeah,
I'd be 100% with him.
I think that's it, isn't it? You could probably you could accept most things, but you did just kill a kid.
Because like Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein drowned a kid. It was an accident, though. You can kind of see that he was playing with the kid and didn't realize that humans drown, I guess. Whereas here, it's like, okay, he did a murder. So we also get that talk of like, who is this part of me? Like, what parts am I made up of? Like, who is anyone? Like, have I got a soul? all this stuff that you really just want more time to breathe in these scenes, I think. Whereas like there's some really good stuff here. I wish we had more time.
That is one of the downfalls of this movie. By the time you get to this part of the movie,
it's almost over and they've got a lot to do.
Very rushed.
Yeah. This is why I don't think I'm so down with the bride stuff happening. Because it feels like there's not much running time. We've probably got about 20 minutes left of the movie.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to cover even if you don't introduce the bride bit.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like they could have done without doing it, to be honest. But it's fine. I mean, what they do is good, but I just feel like I would have rather more time on this, to be honest.
No, because again, you get some amazing scenes, which we'll talk about now in a minute. But yeah, the end does feel very rushed.
It does to me. But he says to Frankenstein, I can love like you wouldn't believe. And he says, I'm full of rage and I'm full of love. And if you won't give me love, if you won't give me one, I will indulge the other.
The other, yeah.
Which is, great line. And he basically demands a bride. He said he wants someone to love. And if he does that, they will go up north and they will disappear and no human will ever see them again.
No, we'll see them again, yeah.
And, Victor says, it's because there's a Henry Frankenstein as well. Like, in watching the old movies, there's so many goddamn names of Frankensteins. In this movie, there are names that were also Frankenstein names. Anyway,
it doesn't help that Henry's in this as well.
I know. Well, no, that's what I mean. I'm like Henry, and no, Henry's actually a different character in this movie.
I think the other name that always seems to get in I think the Frankenstein movies is Peter.
Peter. Peter. Oh god, Peters. That was a fucking Hammer thing though. Hammer were obsessed with the name Peter.
Hammer had a thing for Peters for some reason.
Yeah, like every movie has two Peters. So Victor says, if I can right this wrong, I will. And he basically agrees, okay, I'll do it. So now he heads home.
Yep.
Elizabeth still doesn't know anything. And it's like, where the fuck are we? Like, you okay? Where have you been? And he's like, I'm fine. I need a month to do stuff. And she's like, we're meant to be getting married.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And he's like, I can't tell you, just give me a month and then it'll be fine, I promise. And she's like, promise? You've promised all of this stuff throughout the entire running time of this movie and you've done none of them.
And not only that, like, your brother's dead.
Yes.
Your surrogate
Justine's dead. Not that anyone seems to care, but
your dad now is literally, he's had enough.
He's lost his mind. Yeah, because he kind of loses his mind after William dies, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's like basically bedridden now. Yeah. He ain't up to much, and you want a fucking month to do something.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of heavily insinuated that it's like, if you don't have this goddamn wedding now, your father's going to be dead before you fucking do it.
Yeah,
like, it's now or never, right? But he's like, no, I need to do this. She threatens. Well, I can't remember if she threatens to leave him now or.
Well, she does. She goes off, doesn't she?
She does. She leaves him now, and then he goes back to her immediately after, doesn't he? So
yeah.
So she threatens to leave him, and he's really upset, but he won't tell her anything.
And I think that there are a lot of scenes that are missing.
Yeah, it feels that way.
I think there were the work print has whole scenes between him and Elizabeth talking more about it.
We could have probably done with those.
And I think, I know there are more scenes with Victor and the creation talking about, because I think the creation brings Justine's body to him in a scene that isn't in this version.
Well, of course, we do see her in this.
Yes,
in a moment.
He does, but I think there is a scene where he actually brings.
We actually see him bringing it, right?
Yeah. Which would have been nicer.
Yeah, it would have. And we kind of see, the creation get Justine's body.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course like you said, he brings it to Victor, and Victor like uncloths it, and he's like, "Why her?" And he says like, "Hey, it's just parts. That's what you said in your. That's what you said in your diary, buddy. You said it don't matter. It's just parts. so she's just parts.
Yeah.
And you know,
well, I think
Victor's like, nah, now you've crossed the line. Like, I was gonna go with this crazy thing to stop this, but now you're being vindictive. It's like, it's not even like you're. It almost feels personal now. You're doing this.
Yeah, and I think in the longer versions, he's not quite as horrified.
Oh, really?
Version. Yeah, I think in the longer versions, he's more accepting of doing it. I think there's something else that makes him change his mind in the longer version.
Interesting, because here it's almost like, oh no, you've crossed the line with Justin's body.
It's
like,
almost immediate, isn't it? It's like, nope.
And of course the creature says, if you won't let me have my bride, then I'll be with you on your wedding night.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But of course, Victor breaks the promise. He goes to Elizabeth and he says, you know, hey, let's get married. Forget it. I was wrong. I'm an asshole. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And they do, and it's a lovely wedding day, and the father manages to make it, and it's all happy and lovely, and it's heavily guarded.
Yeah.
Security work in this event. And you know, they all know. They're like, he's like, hey, you need to look out for this bloody monster dude, like, you know, guns ready.
Yeah, and I think he goes, how will we know what he looks like? He's like, you'll know him.
Yeah, you'll recognize him when you see him.
You'll know him.
By the way, have you checked in the house anywhere, just in case he's in the house? No. Oh well, I guess we'll just assume he's outside. That's fine. So yeah, they head off for their kind of honeymoon night, I guess. They don't want Dad hearing. And of course the creation is up in the window as they leave, with the dead father, and we get this great shot of Ian Holm dead in bed, and the monster just closes his eyes after the shot. So unintentionally funny shot. They go to this cabin, and the guards are everywhere, you know, outside, and they go in and they start making love when he hears the sound of the flute. And of course he realizes the monster, and so he heads outside, and the guards are like, we saw him, he was on the roof, but then he disappeared. Meanwhile, Elizabeth looks up and sees him on the roof, and he basically comes through. And it's not meant to be funny, but basically Victor comes back in the room just as the creature is ripping her fucking heart out.
Yeah.
And he literally holds the heart still throbbing, and he's like, I keep my promises. And it's an awesome scene.
Yeah.
And I think it's meant to be horrific, but it's kind of funny.
I think the punching through her chest is really brutal.
It is. No, that bit works. It's the bit, I don't know, something. I always find it kind of humorous when someone's holding a beating heart. It's always kind of like, okay. You know what I mean? It's like, I get that. It's that step too far where it becomes funny for me, you know?
Yeah,
it's cool,
I guess so.
But it's just kind of, you know, it's a cool visual,
it's very stagey.
Yes, yes, very stagey. So he says, I keep my promises, and he jumps out of the window. Her body falls to the ground and smashes.
Well, not even that. It's actually horrific. He knocks the body off as he's leaving, and the body hits the bedside cabinet.
Right. Yeah.
Lamp on it, and the candle just goes.
Oh yeah, bursts into flames into her hair.
It sets her face on fire.
Yeah, burns her hair, burns her face. And yeah, so then of course, you know, Victor is distraught with grief, and he heads back to the estate. Henry's there, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I love her. I'm bringing her back." And he's like, you know, father would have done anything to bring mum back. And he's like, your father's dead. And that's the first that Victor's heard about his father being dead. And Victor's like, well, then there's nothing to stop me. I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
And I always thought that was a very odd delivery of that line as well.
Yeah.
It almost feels like, you know, somebody walked in off screen and said, someone's dead, and then walked off again. It was a really weird, someone's dead, okay. And that's a very odd. That one is very odd delivered, but
it's odd in its delivery. Yeah, he could have been a bit more tactful about that one.
Yeah,
or maybe not even tell him at this point. His wife's just fucking died horrifically.
Yeah,
like like, Matt, my wife has just been murdered. Her heart was ripped from her chest and held in front of me as the fucking life bled from her fucking open wound in her chest. And then she hit a fucking bedside table and burst into flames. And then you're like, oh, your dad's dead, by the way. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. Cheers.
I can see that you're in grief here, and you're it's very odd.
Yeah.
But again, we get an amazing shot here because he's got her wrapped in I presume a blanket.
Yeah, it's a blanket, or maybe the bed sheet or something.
And it's bright red.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of blood in this movie. When it does blood, it does it a lot.
He's got her wrapped up in it, and it's trailing behind him like this, almost like a wedding.
It looks very Dracula.
And well, that's it. That's what I was thinking. He goes up that stairway.
Yeah.
And with it trailing behind him, which is a beautiful shot.
It's a great
shot.
But
it does make you think of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
It does. There are moments in this movie. It's quite a departure, like aesthetically, from Bram Stoker's Dracula. But there are certainly moments.
Because I think it certainly didn't have the same passion that Coppola had for Dracula.
No.
Coppola, as we said last time, Coppola wanted to do, to go all out and make this, like
a proper companion,
different, definitive Dracula version. Whereas I think this one almost feels like it started as that, and then
Branagh got involved.
Branagh got hold of it, and it became something completely different.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I'll say afterwards about
Frank
Darabont said about this, but
okay, I love the shot of we get the music swell as he unboxes the apparatus that they put the creation in. I love it when he unboxes it and it rolls out. And it's like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's gonna do it, and then I guess he's like, well, I was horrified that the creature was going to use Justine's body. But now that I've got her, and she's got a working heart.
Yep.
Or had.
He literally just cuts her head off and puts Elizabeth's head on her.
Yeah.
And I think he replaces the hands and feet, I think, as well, because I think
because they're stitched, because that's how she sees her hand stitched, doesn't she? I think he keeps her hands maybe and her feet, but the rest is Justine.
Again, I think that in one of the earlier in a longer scene, I think he says about Justine's body that the extremities have rotted. So Justine's fingers, I think, and toes aren't viable.
Yeah. I mean, if the hands are rotting, the rest is probably not far behind. Certainly on the turn, right? I mean,
you'd have thought so. She's probably
recommend. Anyway, fine.
There is a very. You don't quite know how much time has passed in this end bit.
No, well, again, it feels very rushed. It's a weird rushed ending. Where a lot happens. I'm assuming there's more time, like you said, than we see.
Yeah.
Because her fingers wouldn't be rotting, given that it looks like he only left like an hour ago. But I think a lot has happened. They had the wedding and stuff, and those things take planning. So he successfully reanimates her. And she like him. She looks like the creature. She's pretty horrific with the burnt face. Yeah, when the stitched up face and she's.
I mean, her wounds very much echo his.
Yes, very much so. I think intentionally so. From a director's perspective, not from the creation's perspective. I don't think he intentionally scarred her in the same way he was or anything. But yeah, so Victor, is overjoyed, and she's really confused and barely kind of conscious, much like he was, although obviously now that he's in love with her, he's not willing to throw her away like he did the creation. He starts dancing with her, and she sort of remembers. She remembers dancing. She sort of starts dancing with him.
And I think there's more of Elizabeth in this one because...
Well, it's Elizabeth's brain, isn't it? It's her brain.
It's exactly, and I think it's a short time, I think.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'm assuming he brought her straight home and just got straight to work. Whereas presumably Waldman probably just stayed in a morgue for a while before all that went down.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, the creation turns up, and he's like, she's mine.
Yep.
You know.
Hey, that's mine.
Thank you. And of course, Victor's like, she's not yours. She's not for you.
Yeah.
And they have this argument, and she stood in the middle, and he's like, say my name. You know, just say my name, Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's nothing like overwhelming the poor girl, is there? I mean,
and then the creature's a little bit.
She's had a very busy day.
The creature's a little bit rapey as well.
Yeah,
kissing her and whatever. And I think it's at that point she kind of sees his scars, and then she sees her arm, and she realizes that she's scarred. It's like the first time she's realized that.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck's happened to me?
What the fuck's happened? And then she gets a view of herself, and she realizes, but she can't form proper words to express. You can tell that her brain's in there.
Yeah,
like Elizabeth is in there somewhere, but she can't form language, and she's really upset and
express herself. Yeah,
but she can't express it with words. But I will say, Carter does a fantastic job of emoting here. You feel the emotion without words. Her eyes say everything, and there's only one eye as well. Sorry.
As we said before, not a terribly good job of looking like she was dead. But...
No, but this bit, she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's really good.
In fact, I think this might be one of her strongest performances. She's got a lot of emotion in this.
I don't know.
She needs it.
I mean, Heather,
I bear in mind, I don't rate her terribly highly at the best of times.
Really? You don't think Helena Bonham Carter is a great actress?
Sometimes in the right role, other times not. I think she's terribly typecast, though. That's half the problem.
I think she's...
That's not necessarily her fault.
In a lot of period pieces. I think that's kind of her strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she's really, really... I think she's a great actress.
Well, she's certainly great in this show, regardless.
She's one of the best things. She's one of the best things in the Burton Planet of the Apes.
Oh God, I barely remember that movie. I'm gonna have to watch it one day again just to remind myself of how it was. I remember being very angry when I left the cinema.
Oh yeah.
But I cannot remember a goddamn thing about it. Doesn't he end up in modern day New York and the apes are like police officers in fucking New York?
Yeah, it's got that ludicrous ending.
I remember that.
Basically, I think the company just said, we want something completely different. We don't want
you fucking got it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, fine.
Fine, you got it.
And funnily enough, I think at one point Burton was in line to do this movie.
Jesus.
And I think he wanted Schwarzenegger as the creature.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a frame for it.
Well, that's about it, though.
Yeah.
Acting wise, Jesus.
I mean, in the book, the creature is like, he's not stitched together like he is in all subsequent not all versions, but most versions that he uses.
It's a potion, isn't it, in the book?
He's formed from dead creatures, and dead bodies.
But he's not sewn, is he? It's like I thought it was a potion.
It's almost like he's sort of amalgamated together. It never really goes into details, but it doesn't really suggest stitched together from body parts. It just it's almost like they were all the body parts were melted in a vat and then put in a mold.
And put into a thing.
Yeah, because he's described as this like 8 foot tall person that you can see the muscles through the skin of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's very different.
Yeah. But she's horrified, and she kind of tries to shout at Victor and tell him how horrified she is. Yeah. Obviously, can't form words. And then much like in the Bride of Frankenstein, she sets herself on fire.
Yeah.
Unlike Bride of Frankenstein, because obviously in Bride of Frankenstein the monster says, we belong dead, and he's kind of all for it. Here they're both horrified.
Mm-hmm.
And the creature escapes effectively.
There's that amazing scene of her going down charging down the corridor on fire.
Oh god, yeah, she sets fire to everything.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus Christ, what are those walls made of? Because they're just exploding as she's hitting them.
Yeah.
And then she basically dives off of the top of the stairway and just plunges to the bottom where she, smolders. And I don't know whether you noticed, but did you notice that there was clearly another take before that? Because before she hits the ground, you can see that there's a black mark on the floor.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, you can see that it was obviously a later take that they didn't clean right.
They didn't clean the bits right.
Yeah. This is no hard boiled.
No.
Although you do see the marks on that as well, which is funny.
You do, yes. But yeah, so we then cut back to the start of the movie. Finally, we're back where we started, and Victor dies presumably of like exhausting cold and fucking
I'm guessing
maybe hypothermia, exhaustion, everything, pneumonia, maybe it was pneumonia. Who knows? He dies anyway. And Walton heads out, and he's like telling the first mate, he's like, I think he's the first mate, he's like telling him like, it was a crazy story, like,
he's raving. He was clearly a nutter.
And they decide they're going to bury him, or no, sorry, not bury him, burn him. They're going to give him a funeral, Victor, and they take his body out, and they
first they hear him. They hear him. He cries, doesn't he? He cries out, and they go down to the cabin.
Oh, sorry, they do find him in the cabin. Sorry, in my head, I thought they found him weeping over the body outside. No, you're right. They go down to the cabin, and he's weeping in the cabin.
He goes upstairs to talk to the first mate after he's died, and then they hear him cry out, and they go in. They rush into the cabin with guns drawn.
And of course, Walton knows who he is.
Yeah.
He suddenly realizes, this crazy story was true, and he's like, "Why are you crying?
Yeah.
Why do you weep?" And he says, "Because he was my father. My father's dead." And so they prepare a funeral, and Walton really sort of feels for this creature. I guess having heard the whole story, whereas the rest of the shipmates are like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
His name, doesn't he? I think, and he says he never gave me one.
Yeah, he said, "What's your name?" He's like, "He never gave me a name." So they make the funeral pyre, and it's all very sad, and the creature's there, and they go to set fire to it, and then suddenly God says no.
Suddenly God says nope.
God's like, "No, you're not bloody doing this. This man, he was bad, and I refuse to have him go have a funeral." So the ice finally, because they were stuck in the ice, of course, at the start of the movie, the ice begins to break very violently. And they all, make it to the ship, but they see the creatures in the water, and Walton holds his hand out, and he's like, "Take my hand." But the creation's like, "No, I'm. Does he say like I'm done with humans or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. And he takes the torch.
He takes the torch and keeps it alight. Heads over to
that's a skill. That
is a bloody good skill, but I guess he is super strong, right? And all of that. So I guess he might have the power to do that with one arm and two legs to keep afloat and keep the thing up. So he goes to basically Victor's body is now on this tiny iceberg floating away. It's a great visual. And he stands over Victor and sets fire to Victor, and they basically both go up in flames as the crew watch. And the great thing to cap this movie off is that Walton has seen the result of obsession. And
he actually learned from the story.
He learned from the story, and he learned from Victor's obsession. And the first mate says, "Where are we going?" And he says, "Home."
Yeah, because they're all looking at him like, "Go on, say fucking north."
Yeah, go on, say north, and I will fucking chuck you on the fire.
Because exactly, you're going over the fucking side.
But yeah, Walton is learned, and I love that. Someone, because he was driven by obsession too, and he has now realized the result of this kind of rabid obsession. And he orders the crew home, and that's where the movie ends. I really like this movie. I gotta be honest. It's a different take. It's not perfect. and I do think we could have lost the bride stuff. Although I really like the bride stuff. Almost feels like it should have been another movie. Really.
I think there are certain things. I think I don't agree with Coppola that you needed to remove 20 minutes.
No. That's some of the best part of the movie. Honestly, that build up at the start is fantastic. I love it.
Maybe some of it could have been cut down slightly.
Yeah.
And more time given to the end. Because I guess the thing is it's a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
As it is, and I suppose whoever cut it down was desperate to make a 2-hour movie. So I'm guessing the bulk of it was taken from the end.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It is, because it does feel it feels like a very well paced movie.
Yeah.
For me, because I like all of the start, I don't really have a problem with that. It feels very well paced up until the point they decide they also want to do Bride as well.
Yeah.
And then it's like, whoa, okay, there's not much time left, guys.
Yeah, and as I said, I can see why some people don't like it, because it's not the horror that I think people were expecting.
No, in much the same way that Bram Stoker's Dracula was not the Hollywood blockbuster action horror that they were expecting. It's not Hammer style actiony Dracula. It's an art film, and this is almost a friggin' stage play on screen. I love both though. I really like this movie. In fact, rewatching it, I liked it more than I remember. Honestly. Yeah, I remember liking it. I've never hated it, but I must admit, rewatching it, I was like, oh, there's a lot to really like here.
There is. I think it's a very overlooked movie.
I think so, because everyone's watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, but quite a few people have just never watched this one.
No. I think it even at the time, I think it was just not received very well, and it just sort of dived away. It just didn't have the same impact as Bram Stoker's Dracula did. It just and I can kind of see why, because it's a good movie, but it's nowhere near as good as Dracula. Dracula, I think, is an amazing movie. It's one of my favorites, and that's a huge spectacle.
Yeah,
this, I think, is almost trying to be that, but not quite managing to be that. Because I think Branagh was trying to concentrate on it more being like an opera than.
Yeah, and you can see that in the direction.
Yeah,
for sure.
So Frank Darabont, who wrote the script, was terribly pissed off with this. He said this.
He was like, I didn't write all of these topless scenes. Yeah, for Kenneth Branagh. I did not write this.
He said the film was a shocking disappointment, a misshapen monster born of Kenneth Branagh's runaway ego.
Well, I can certainly. I mean, I like this movie, but I can see the fucking ego.
He said he took a poignant and thought-provoking tragedy and turned it into a heavy metal monster movie.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Casting Robert De Niro as the monster was beyond inexplicable. And I thought, well, no. I don't agree with that either.
I think it's a great performance, actually.
I do think it was certainly an odd choice.
So
never in a million years would I have thought to choose Robert De Niro as the creature.
The only bit of that statement that I agree with is the ego on display.
Oh yeah,
100% agree with that.
I think I think actually, like you said, you think this is better than you remember.
Yeah,
I think because of Branagh's performance in this, slightly less of it, having watched it this time.
Yeah,
because I think it is really.
Oh God, he loved himself.
He loves himself in this movie.
Yeah,
which I guess I'd never quite realised before.
No, I certainly noticed it this time around. I was like, wow, you're topless a lot, dude. And just like, yeah.
He also went on to say, it's a weird doppelganger effect when I watched this movie. It's kind of like the movie I wrote, but not all the movie I wrote. It had no patience for subtlety. It had no.
Yeah, it's certainly not a subtle movie.
And no patience for the period. It was loud and blunt and rephrased by the director in every possible turn. And he just says, if you love this movie, throw all your roses at Kenneth Branagh's feet. If you hate it, throw spears there too, because it's his movie.
Damn.
Yeah, so Darabont really, really hates this movie. And I think initially Scorsese did as well. I think he's gone back now and said,
with hindsight, it's actually fine.
Yeah, I see what you're doing, and I you know I think it was better than I thought was, but that I think that the initial falling out really pissed him off.
Mm. Well, in any case, that was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994, and definitely worth a watch. Good fun if you want something to watch this Halloween. But of course,
again, like I said with the Dracula one, don't go into this movie expecting, the horror of Frankenstein or
a summer blockbuster.
Yeah, it's not that. It's more of a gothic love story.
Yeah.
Than that. So yeah.
And I think it succeeds in that.
Yeah, I think it does too. I think it does a very good job of that.
But yes, in any case, we will be back next time with, I guess it'll be our Halloween movie review things.
Mm-hmm.
New movies that we've watched over the last couple of weeks.
Hopefully there'll be some nice horror movies that we can talk about.
Oh, I've certainly got one. So
yeah.
But yes, until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.